So here's the thing, just to your question about agriculture, and the Honorable Minister mentioned it, the agriculture ahead at 16%, which means that for every naira we're spending, we're getting less than it. And the recent Q3 statistics, so let's do a bit of data here. The 5 sectors contributing about 75% to the GDP are as follows. 1, agriculture, currently at 31%. Trade, 13.9% in spite of the border closure. Information and communication, 14%. Manufacturing, mining and quarrying, which includes, I believe, the oil and gas. The rest of the economy is struggling with the last 15%. So here's the whole idea. If the contribution to your GDP is about 30 in agriculture, yet food inflation is high, there's a challenge there. In your information and communications, we are not having to spend as much money, but actually you are getting a lot out of it. Ditto in your entertainment and creative industry, yes. You are not spending as much money, you are getting the bulk out of it. But the foundation of it all must sit around one question, and they all link together. And this is where we're going towards the final stage, so I could just take questions.
Well, can I just for a second, that divergence, I think that's the right English word. Yeah, the divergence between agriculture, it also speaks to why we shouldn't be emphasizing the young should go to the farm. We're going to deploy our best talent to a sector that just requires certain kind of technique and methods to make it highly productive. We are currently dealing with low productivity agriculture. That's not where you send your demographic dividends to. You know, so there's this divergence in the way that we're sort of on the
touch the fact that the schools itself, the curriculum required to go in there are not exactly what the new market we are creating requires. So if we think that education is a separate conversation when we are discussing economy, it is not. It is a single line. And once we miss that fundamentals there, we miss everything. And that takes me to this question we never answered. Madam Minister, well, let me go back to my usual thing. Honorable Minister, that's what I prefer calling you.
I actually like the sound of Madam Minister.
No, for consistency, let me stick with the Honorable Minister. We made a marked achievement. No matter how late we start, we always seem to remember that we need to do what Bismarck always calls that we play a football match, and we end up scoring on both sides of the field. We score a goal, then we score for the opponents as well. And so what we've done is this. We've had a border closure since Q3 2019. Has there been an assessment that confirms that the objectives there have been met? And if so, is it continuing? And if not, when do we likely need to see a change? Or do we have to wait for the external pressures from our ratification of ACTA to necessitate that change? Madam Minister.
Well, so the short answer is yes, we have made an assessment. The President set up a committee, an interministerial committee, and we've made an assessment. And all the members of the committee agreed and are recommending to the President that it is time to open the borders. That the objective has been met in the sense that we have been able over this couple of months to work together with our partners in a tripartite committee, do joint border patrols together, and reinforce the sanctity of the commitments that we made to each other. So each side has learned its lesson. Nigeria has been as affected as our partners in terms of the businesses that we have in Nigeria as well. So we will be expecting that the borders will open very soon. The date will be decided by Mr. President and fixed.
Thank you very much for the honesty. I can take questions from the audience or from an international community. Is there any questions? There will be none. I've actually said there will be none. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Ike, I'll come to you. Oh, madam, I'm having to do a 360 degree. It will come to you.
Good evening. My name is Ike Chioke. I'm a Group Managing Director of AfriInvest, and I've listened with much intent to this panel. It's been very, very enlightening, and I thank you all. Given where the Nigerian economy is now, given all the issues of poverty, given the fact that we're in recession again, given the population dynamics we are facing, if you were to think of two things that can get us out of our quagmire, what would those be? How could we actually restart this economy? You know, I'm thinking of how do you get growth back into this economy? Because that engine needs to start moving. We've been in reverse for far too long. Thank you.
I was thinking we'll check it, but I like the tone of the question. I would rather do this.
EAC now, he should tell us.
Well,
Chairman.
No. As the EAC, my job is to lead a team that advises the president. So, but right, no, but I have absolutely, well, I have clarity about what needs to be done, and I think I have said this before, and forgive me that I repeat it. Ike says two things. So for me, two things. The first is macroeconomic stability. Without macroeconomic stability, we are going nowhere fast. And right now, we do not have macroeconomic stability.
I think, Doyin, you have to explain what a lot of the times Nigerians don't quickly get it. You're not talking to those of us that.
What is macro stability? Now, when you talk about the stability of an economy, especially on its macro side, which is in the aggregate, essentially what you're saying are a set of characteristics. And there are three of them that are important. Faster than population growth, because that is the only basis on which, and by the way, you can have growth. Nigeria has had growth without creating jobs and without encouraging inclusiveness. And so, but what we do need, if you have no growth, certainly you're not going to create jobs, you're certainly not going to have inclusiveness. So the first characteristic, there are three characteristics of macro stability. The first, growth that is faster than population growth, but that is job creating and inclusive. That's the first. The second, costs must be well contained. In other words, inflation has got to be pressured. Nigeria has always, at least I remember from the days I was on the Monetary Policy Committee, single-digit inflation remains the target of Nigerian policy. But as of today, I think the last set of inflation numbers, 14.35% and rising. And so we need to reduce inflation. And the third thing is that we need an external balance that is manageable. One of the things that the data showed, when you look at the numbers in Q2, which is the last available set of figures, our current account deficit was actually more than what we borrowed from the IMF to staunch the hemorrhage that COVID-19 was going to cause. So when we talk about macro stability, you need growth, you need lower inflation, and you need external balance. That's the first thing. The second thing for me, which is not possible unless you achieve the first, is investment. And I will make that point again. Nigeria has to be about investment, and more investment. And let us not kid ourselves. If anybody is here thinking that government is going to be the source of investable resources, sorry, ain't gonna happen. Not anytime soon. Perhaps in the future, perhaps. But as of today, what are we looking at? Think about it. oil prices, 2021, if you look at NYMEX, which is the New York Mercantile Exchange, the futures prices, fluctuates somewhere between $41 and $44 a barrel. OPEC, we are constrained by what we can produce. So we are looking at 1.4 million barrels of crude oil. You add the condensates to it, takes us to about 1.7, 1.8 million. That's not going to significantly be different from what we are this year. And so if we're going to get the investable resources, we really do need to have a focus on asking the question, what will it take to be a destination that some of that $17 trillion of money that is invested in negative yield assets will come to Nigeria? Just imagine the transformation. $20 billion of foreign direct investment, not portfolio investment, direct investment. Imagine the transformation that rings on foreign exchange, on inflation, on productivity. At the heart of it for me is a very simple thing. Nigeria must increase the supply side of her economy. We don't do that, everything else. You know where we are at today, and I thank Ike for this question. Where we are at today is the mentality of poverty. We are managing demand. We are trying to constrain demand. Whereas where we need to go is to expand supply. That is the only basis on which you're going to get jobs being created. So those are my two things. Macroeconomic stability, which I hope I have explained in a way that people can understand, but also the ability to consistently look for and get meaningful levels of investment. Thank you.
Thank you.
What is there to add, except to say that in addition to macroeconomic stability and investments, we also need to make sure that we ensure the security and welfare of the people. Because that's the sole purpose of governance, to provide security and welfare of the life and properties of the citizens. So we have done well sometimes, and in other instances, not so well. And in providing the welfare of the people, we need to ensure that we invest, or we continue to invest on the category of people that actually need help. That is the poor and the vulnerable, even as we try to work within government, work with subnational governments, and work with the region to enhance our security. And also recognizing the fact that the main basis where we have insecurity is actually a deficit of development, which can be eventually addressed if we're able to get investments and increase productivity and create more jobs.
Thank you very much, Madam. Doctor.
I would embark on a massive deregulation of this economy, meaning that every sector, I'd simply say to myself, what are the critical prior actions that would open up that sector to private money? So, aviation sector, I would massively prepare it. Think of the skies as though it were, markets, and that policies can link up my skies, right? Think of just the kind of transformation that Togo, as VP at the World Bank, I said to the Togolese president, there's not much you have going for you. But one thing you have going for you is that you can say, we're very close to Nigeria. That's its strategy. For a small country like Togo, without much going for it, we're very close to Nigeria. And therefore, we are an environment of sanity in terms of the doing business environment that we give to you. In terms of, for example, you saw what happened with the airport, the aviation sector. It was a strategy that came out of, we're very close to Nigeria. You know, take the agriculture sector, take the oil and gas sector. Look at the sectors like housing, and sectors like even the agriculture in terms of agribusiness. Look at your manufacturing sector and identify some of the stranded opportunities that are not able to lift their heads. You have 70% informality of your economy because these are eking out a living. In the market segmentation, you can see, you get to the market, there are all kinds of products being produced in this country that you see. But these people are just eking out a living. They are operating on the margins. On the fringes, that's the word. So you look at that and you say, how do I move my service sector? And by the way, Doyin, I don't know, but I think service sector is as much as 50% in this country. But it's low productivity service sector. So I'm going to say to myself, how do I boost the productivity of this service sector? As I boost the productivity, I expand opportunities, I expand jobs. So deregulation, massive deregulation. I would, you see this petroleum sector, the day we truly deregulate petroleum sector, a lot of our current political class will not want to be president. That's the plain truth. Because
that's going to be a coachable coach. You want to repeat that again?
Oh yeah. The day we successfully deregulate a petroleum sector, a lot of people who have no business being leaders of this country will not run for office. Oil is the magnet that's attracting these people because a president sits atop this commodity that has just, played us so badly as a people. So we need to deregulate that sector truly. The government is currently doing price fixing and they call it deregulation. I beg your pardon, And then the second thing that would need to be done is, why is it that the talent sectors are actually sectors of opportunity? Have you asked yourself that question? What are the talent sectors? The technology sector. Have you seen our young people with their technology sector? The innovation, they can play at any level. Bring it on. That's what our young people say to the world. That's why you have, is Mark Zuckerberg not invested in our technology sector in this country? He is. Now Jeff Bezos of Amazon has come. Who was the other one? Jack. So it's unbelievable. It's because this one, you don't need to know anybody. The market tests what you produce. And our technology sector, our talent sector is just waiting. Can you imagine an enabling environment where you can have many of them that are making us so proud in that sector already? And then you look at the creative sector. It's also talent. I mean, you're not going to do federal quota with films, with what you produce on the basis of your own creative excellence. Who is going to come and sit and tell you, oh, you must have somebody from, no.
You set the online alight, and before you set all of us alight, I'm going to go on to Ari. Ari, are you there? If Ari is not there,
I am here. I am here and listening.
Ari, because you took too much more of my time earlier on, you wouldn't have too much. But please, can you just help us balance this? Can we have two things to get us out of the quagmire? Aikichioke of the Afri-Invest Group asked the most salient question. Mention two things we need to do to get out of the quagmire before I get back to Dr. Obi.
I think Dr. Salami said it all. I mean, the importance of trying to restore macroeconomic stability is and it was well explained what macro stability is. But maybe I will give another way here to explain. It's restoring confidence. It's making sure that investors feel confident to invest in the economy, domestic and foreign investors. For that, you need predictability. So macro stability offers predictability. And it reduces the volatility. You know, you have growth, very high growth in one year, very low growth in other years. In the past 5 years, Nigeria has not even had positive, very, very high growth. Inflation is very volatile. It goes up, it goes down. The exchange rate is volatile despite efforts of keeping stable.
And my take is that I'd like to suggest, most respectfully, that all of you seem to have been consciously or appear to be walking on eggshells. And I would say this, about 10 years ago, at the time I was still at the NESG, on the occasion of Nigeria's 50th independence anniversary, I argued very strenuously at a board meeting that we should not that year focus on any sector of our economy. And my reason was very simple. I submitted very strongly that I believe that the problem with Nigeria was not so much about the lack of knowledge about what should be done, or the absence of policy documents or programmatic documents on what should be done to fix a problem. I submitted very strongly that we didn't really need to be convinced that we needed power to power our economy, that we needed the education sector to function, or even the social sector, the health sector to work, or that we needed infrastructure. And thankfully, I had support at the board at the time. And the theme for that year's summit was Nigeria at 50, the challenge of leadership and visionary, and the challenge of visionary leadership and good governance. And we focused on it. And we went around and interviewed former presidents, former ministers. And it was very interesting, the kinds of responses we got. I've listened to everything you've said. The need for macroeconomic stability, the need for investment, the need for the focus on our certain sectors and everything. There's one important component, I believe, that you fail to speak to. And that is the role of leadership in all of this. The role of our politics in all of this. Because we know that it's the quality of our leadership that has propelled either our progress or lack thereof for the last 60 years. Where we are today, to my mind, is based on the quality of leadership we've had across levels, not just at the federal level, but at the subnational levels, at the local government levels. And we can look around the country today and see states where you have people who have the intellect, who have the exposure, who have the commitment and what they've done. We can also look at states where, we couldn't say the same, and we know what the situation is there. The statistics from the National Bureau of the figures from National Bureau of Statistics speak to these issues. And so please, Mr. Chairman of the EAC, Madam Minister, and of course, former Vice President of the World Bank, I'd like to have your views, however, brief they may be, on the role of leadership in the attainment of all the things you've said, in the interventions that Mr. Chioke asked that would need to be made to really get us out of this quagmire. Thank you.
Thank you. Without much further ado, let me hand over to the panelists. My job is easy.
Right. Well, the first question, which I suppose was directly only for me, I'm not sure why, says the EAC and providing economic clarity. Now, please understand what the EAC is. It's an advisory council to the president. Before today, not since the EAC was created in October last year, nobody would say, oh, you've seen me address press conferences or make public pronouncements. The EAC has been working, making recommendations to His Excellency the President, and that's the nature of the job. Now, I would argue that therein would be elements of trying to clarify stuff and trying to say this is where certain things should be, rearranging stuff. But as far as I am concerned, and as far as the mandate of the EAC is concerned, it is not to, we're not a legislatively established body. And so to that extent, we must have, we must work within the mandate that we have been invited to discharge. So that, I hope that brings some clarity to the role, to the role of the EAC. So issues come up. The president is very clear about the areas in which he wants advice. They've been set up and we have been providing the advice in that area. So you would have to go to my principal and ask him, are these people providing clarity? If we are not, then we are out of a job. Now, but on the other question, which is leadership, not only do I, in every sphere, I come from a business school, environment. I spent 20 years teaching in a business school. I run a small little company. I do consulting. And one thing you learn very quickly, very early, is the importance of leaders. If we don't have the leadership capacity emplaced, then no matter the ideas, they just will not get implemented. And I think it was, I'm not sure if it was Dr. Ezekwesili or Femi who said, oh, it's not about whether we have the knowledge or I don't think anybody has any doubts that we have a classic clarity about what the issues are. And I think we have quite a, well-documented ideas. Now, what is important is that leadership and followership. So when people talk about leadership, in my view, leadership comes dependent on what the followership also demand.
To work together.
Because without that, leaders get rather complacent, and that's the end of that. And so for me, leadership is important. Without it, we ain't going nowhere. But also, followership is there is a responsibility on followership. That means they must hold leaders to account. So as far as the direct question is concerned, Frank is correct. And I doubt if you will get a dissenting view, leadership is extremely important.
Just your comments before I ask the final question. Your comments.
Leadership is everything, but who is the leader? It's not just the president. It's not the governor alone. It's not the ministers.
Exactly.
There's the local government chairman. There's traditional rulers. There's a leader in the home, that is the father. Leadership is everywhere. So let's not be thinking of it's just the president that is the leader, because leadership is a collective. And we have to look at how we can improve the whole of the collective, not improving one aspect of it.
So the leadership of the president is very important. You can't even equate it to the leadership that we expect every other person in this country to express. On the shoulders of the president lie the fate, of millions and millions and millions of people. So the leadership at that national level, the leadership of the president of a country matters. We must get that right. So to that extent, I agree with Frank, but I thought Frank heard when I said, I talked about leadership. I talked about it.
I think he was prodding you to say more, which I do not have the time for.
I won't fall for his bait, but I'd like to say that, by not taking responsibility, what we do is that we actually let off our political class so easily. We can't let them off easily. For goodness sake, if you get to the place where you want to lead us, it must be that you have something that you will do that would make a difference in our lives. So the idea the president is the leader in the office of the citizen, that there can be no president in this country without the expression of your mandate. And that because you occupy this office of the citizen, the legitimacy of anybody in our political offices depends on you. So you're more powerful than you can imagine. That's my conversation, to embolden the electorate to be powerful. But in terms of leadership, it belongs to those who come out and say, vote for them. When they fail to solve it, we must not mince words in telling them, this country is currently not being governed. Let's just tell ourselves the truth. There is an absence of governance, and we all feel it. We feel it in the fact that the young people out there are wondering. I mean, look, they disrespect all of us, the elder generation. They do, the older generation.
I'm not part of your generation.
Well, it's okay. Look, I am comfortable with their anger. The reason I'm comfortable with it is that it actually becomes the best society from what we've been handed. You know, so for me, leadership at the end of the day has to be exercised by those that we have given a mandate to lead us, and we should not allow them abdicate that responsibility.
Thank you very much. 7 months after COVID came into place, and we actually pulled together COVID on one side, the Governors Forum on the others, and the Presidential Committee on the other side. The questions Nigerians would keep on asking every one of us here, and around the economy, is that how could we not turn this moment into a moment whereby we were able to boost the capacity for the health sector? That is the true test of leadership, not just in crisis, but in moments there. You can therefore apportion the blame appropriately, but the central thing is about, as a nation, we face the leadership challenge. Whoever is the president at the apex of it, when he takes the credit for when the sun comes out, he would take the blame when the clouds and the rain starts to fall. On that note, I would like to wrap up by asking you all, like I said, can you just try to help us find the stars in the darkness? Can you try, in some moments of inspiration, provide for us in a manner and in a message which the ordinary Nigerian can hear and say to them, tomorrow will find us in a better place? I will start in the same sequence, starting from a reverse sequence, starting from you, going off to Dr. Salami, and going to Ari, and I'll give the Honorable Minister the last word. Dr. Ezekwesili.
You know, 2 segments of our population give me the greatest hope for Nigeria: the young people and the women. And these are the segments that have hitherto been excluded from the massive governance failure that has been created. Now, these 2 segments have become very vocal in demanding for a different society. I am praying that they would find their power, that they would discover indeed how powerful they are, because they are way more powerful than they imagine. The data shows that if the young people and the women of this country decided to create a new Nigeria, it is entirely possible. I believe in the power of the indomitable spirit that I have seen amongst women entrepreneurs, women professionals, and what I have seen of the young people who, for, between these 2 classes, by the way, these 2 segments that I talked about, do you know the biggest asset they have? The fact that they are connected to the rest of the world. You see that technology, that telephone, they don't need to have a car. They just have that access. And with that access, the world has become their oyster. Imagine what would be if we fixed politics in this country.
Thank you very much. Just a moment. Ari, again.
Yes.
Please, can we just have your closing thoughts in a way that's quite optimistic and actually speaks to the part?
Be brief. Nigeria has a huge potential. This is a very, very large country. Hard-working, big population that has a lot going for them. My sense is that to unlock under those type of new ways of policy, more outward looking, not so much inward looking, competitiveness. This can be done, and we have many examples in the world of very successful achievements based on reformulating policies, providing macro stability, attracting investments to create that inclusive growth that will benefit all Nigerians. And I will just conclude to thanking very much everyone for this wonderful discussion, and to say that the IMF will be together with Nigeria. We are very close partners. We were there when emergency hit through the pandemic, and we will continue by investing in the institutions, providing training, technical assistance. We want to be together, and we want to partner with Nigeria to unleash this huge potential that I'm sure will come in the future. So thank you very much for this.
Thank you very much. Ari, stay by. Doctor.
Right. Thank you very much. Two things give me real hope that, as you say, yes, it's dark at the moment, but it's not going to last. And these two things are, first and foremost, the opportunities that are out there globally that Nigeria must work towards being part of. No matter what we say, as I look around, I look at the evolution of technology, I look at the geopolitical dynamics that are beginning to play out, and I look at the, shall we say, as an economist, what the comparative advantages that Nigeria potentially has. And I'm encouraged that if only. But the second part, which further strengthens my if only thought, is, in my view, the amount of time that it is taking countries to achieve spectacular outcomes is actually shrinking. And what that speaks to, in my view, is that, when I said if only, and it then speaks to me to say, imagine how quickly we really could make tangible, irreversible progress in a way that somebody could stand back and look at Nigeria 2 years from now and wonder what happened that made her so positively well regarded as an economic place to go. So for me, it's the opportunities that are out there are immense. Technology is doing all sorts of stuff. Convergences around the world are doing, geopolitics is doing all sorts of stuff. That means opportunities are there. But the other point is just how little, within how short a space of time, a country can start from zero and get to somewhere really good.
Okay. Honorable Minister.
Let me thank everyone for being here today. It's really been very interesting and very rewarding for me. And just to reiterate the point of our leadership, for me, leadership is not about just the person that is at the top. We are a federation. We have 3 tiers of government. The states are independent, autonomous units. Is almost broken. In a lot of places, it's completely broken. And that's the development level that reaches and touches the lives of the people. So while we talk about leaders, let us remember that leadership is at various levels. And I agree that leaders should be held responsible, but it should be leaders at every level. Let's not just say it's just that one person that is absolutely responsible. COVID brought a lot of challenges, but it did not remove the opportunities that exist in our country. As a matter of fact, it presented to us new opportunities.
Exactly.
With COVID, we had an opportunity to make an assessment, national assessment, to realize, and we realize how bad our health infrastructure is. And we are using this opportunity of COVID and the resources that have been mobilized from government, from the private sector, funds that we raise through multilateral institutions to improve our health institutions. So at the end of it, we will come out of COVID with a better healthcare system than we started out with. We will come out of COVID having invested more in digital facilities to enhance our educational system.
It's been enlightening for me to sit amongst you giants, and I thank you for humbling yourself to the questions. I have no direct intention to put myself in harm's way, so I reserve all further comments. Thank you very much. Thank you.
He's an amazing moderator. Let's appreciate this moderator, ladies and gentlemen. Fantastic. Mr. Chairman, please. Fantastic. I think if there's a World Cup of moderating, you should represent Nigeria.